raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Welcome, Patriots, to another edition of the Raising Cain Show. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a subject that I think is on a lot of people's minds, but we're going to be revealing some truths that a lot of people don't want to realize and don't want to really think about. So it's going to be a very important topic tonight, and I've got one of the best people joining me to help break this down. Retired U.S. Border Patrol leader J.J. Carrell, a man who spent 24 years on the front lines from journeyman agent to senior leadership. So, folks, as you know, I always like to run the commercials ahead of time. That way we have an uninterrupted interview and time to talk and go back and forth on this issue without any interruptions. So I'm going to run those now, and stick with us. We will be right back after a short break.
Heard of Q Broadcast? It's taking the world by storm. People are cutting the cord to their high cable bills and moving away from streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and others for something better. Q Broadcast. For just $60 a month, you'll get access to every channel you could ever want, including HBO, Cinemax, and Starz. And the best part? There are no contracts, no hidden fees, and you're free to cancel anytime. With Q Broadcast, you can enjoy streaming live TV, movies, and top series on up to 5 devices at once. Whether you're at home or on the go, Q Broadcast makes sure your entertainment is always at your fingertips. Imagine being able to watch all your favorite channels from anywhere, anytime, without any restrictions. We're talking about thousands of movies, hundreds of TV series, and a huge library of live channels, all in one place. And don't forget video on demand and pay-per-view events. Those are included at no extra cost, so you'll never miss a big event again. Now, take a second and think about your current cable bill. You're probably paying anywhere between $100 and $300 every month, locked into long-term contracts and hit with surprise rate increases. With Q Broadcast, that's a thing of the past. It's just $60 a month. No contracts, no extra fees, no hidden costs, and no price hikes. Why juggle multiple subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, and cable when Q Broadcast gives you everything you need in one convenient package? People everywhere are switching to Q Broadcast, saving money and getting more content than ever before. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and sign up for Q Broadcast today. Just $60 a month, no contracts, no hidden fees. It's time to take control of your entertainment and start streaming smarter.
Since 2017, 150,000 farms have shut down. Working farmland has been reduced by 21 million acres. The system has been crippling the remaining farmers, forcing some to adopt nefarious farming techniques, by pumping hormones and other performance-enhancing drugs into their cows so they can survive in crammed feedlots. Or the farmers are forced to jump ship and sell to land-hoarding, profit-chasing agricultural oligarchies, who use their billions of dollars to crush the competition and increase your family's dependence on their manufactured food. What could possibly go wrong? The family farm will soon be a thing of the past, unless you do something. You can. That's why there's From the Farm, an industry-disrupting platform that connects consumers directly with local farmers, which means you can buy fresh, non-factory farm food, and you'll know exactly where your food came from and how it was raised. For the first time in nearly 100 years, independent farms will have a way to not only survive, but thrive. From the Farm was founded by A.J. Richards, an active homesteader, and Brooke Entz, a CrossFit Games athlete, and an Amazonian warrior in the movies Wonder Woman and Justice League. She clearly has a passion for healthy food and a healthy lifestyle. And since both AJ and Brooke come from generations of ranchers and farmers, they know what they're talking about. We can't do this alone. We need the strength of the American people behind us. Help us build a new food system that combines the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. Investing in From the Farm isn't just a financial decision. It's an investment into our future, our small family farms, and our food sovereignty. Invest today.
Welcome, Patriots, back to the Raising Cain Show, where we strip away the spin and get to the truth. Tonight, we're exposing the realities behind America's border crisis, what's really happening, who's responsible, and why the public is being misled. JJ Carrell, a man who, like I said, had spent 24 years on the front lines. Carrell led high-risk operations dismantling smuggling networks and watched policy changes from that transformed really America's border into what he calls a manufactured disaster. JJ, thank you so much for joining us. We got a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it.
Good. Let's dive into it. Glad to be here.
So I guess, we were talking before we came on the air, and you said something to me that really kind of I think hit me in a way I hadn't really thought about it. What are the numbers that are going on in terms of how many people are here illegally and how many are actually being deported?
Well, that's a great question, because if you and I are going to have an honest discussion, then we need to know what the hell the real numbers are, because they've lied to us. My whole career in the United States Border Patrol was a lie about the numbers, and we all knew it because we saw the number of getaways every single night. So in 2019, Yale and MIT did a study, not two bastions of conservative thought, right? They did a study, they created an algorithm, pushed all this immigration data and demographic data into an algorithm, ran the algorithm 1 million times, and came out with the high of 29 million illegals were in the country. They found the mean after 1 million times was 22 million. Everyone in academia, everyone in immigration, law enforcement, every media, politicians all went 22, 22. So we went from 11 million to 22 million literally overnight. And everyone agreed to it. That was 2019. Under Joe Biden, per their data, not mine, per their own admission through arrest data and FOIA requests showing that they brought in illegal aliens in the dark of night, flew them in from foreign countries, is 18 million. So now we're at 40 million. I'm telling you that it was 30 million people crossed the border illegally under Joe Biden. President Trump has finally came out and said, well, we believe the number's 25 million in the last 4 years. So we have 40 million under Joe Biden. I say it's 50, 52, and Donald Trump saying it's 45, 47. We're just splitting hairs here, right? I'm saying it's 50 million. You want to say that I'm wrong? That's fine. Let's go with Joe Biden, because the government has always told us the truth, Nate, always. Yeah, right. So 40 million illegals, but I want the audience to also understand something. Right now, Marco Rubio came out and admitted there's 55 million foreign nationals that are here legally on visas. So you take that 45 million, you take the 55 million, we have 100+ million foreign nationals in our country. And everyone asked the crazy question, why is all of our benefits so scarce? Why do we have a housing crisis? Why is our economy crashing? Well, because we have an infrastructure built for 350 million people, but it's serving over 450 million people. Just do the math. Open your eyes, America.
I'll tell you, I saw this firsthand in Southern California when I was living there raising kids. I was living in Moreno Valley, California. And this is just one example of the types of things that people don't think about, of how it impacts our lives here to have illegals. We were getting notifications in the mail from the government of Mexico offering to send textbooks in Spanish to us because there were that many illegal aliens living in Southern California that they just assumed we might be. They had advertisements for elections in Mexico that were being broadcast in English on U.S. radio stations because, and that's not cheap. These were on like main radio stations, not on like some Spanish speaking radio station. I'm talking like on, the regular rock station.
Yeah.
That's how many illegals were living in Southern California that they realized they needed to advertise there, so that they could vote, I guess, by mail. Hey, they figured out how to rig their elections down there too, right? But the other thing that was very frustrating to me was the fact that my kids were going to a school that was underperforming.
Mhm.
And when I looked at, because I was a taxpayer there and I owned a home there, so my property taxes were paying for the schools there. When I looked at their budget for how much they were spending on English as a second language, it was significant.
Mhm.
They had like probably half of their teachers, had to be ESL teachers and, for all these different classes. So think about all those resources pulled away from my kids where they couldn't, get less students to a class. You know what I mean? So they had like 30, 40 kids in a class.
Mhm.
How are they expected to get help, in learning? Not only that, but there was a social problem that was going on the campus as well. Because a lot of these kids, they were not from here and they were creating like little gangs
Mhm.
on the campus. And my kids were facing, one of my kids got, uh, you know, some other kid was, started basically harassing him and, challenged him to fight and he fought back. And then he got suspended,
Mhm.
even though it was the other kid who had started the fight. So this is the kind of thing that has been going on in our country, and it impacts not just that, but also the labor market. I remember years ago, I had bought into that lie that, oh, they're not taking jobs anybody wants, until my brother, who is in the construction industry, cleared me up on that.
Mhm.
He said, you know what? He said, that's a bunch of bull. He says, let me tell you. He says, it's a real problem in the construction, industry, and that those are high paying jobs. He says, but when you have people who are not certified, who are not insured, and they're
Mhm.
willing to do the work for a lot less, and they come to work for somebody and somebody gets hurt on the job, and he says, not only that, but they're driving our wages down. So it was interesting because I looked at, it made me start thinking about, okay, well, there was a time when the Democrats were for immigration control. Like they didn't want a bunch of illegals. In fact, in Southern California, that was one of the big areas where Cesar Chavez would
Mhm.
take union guys, these were all Democrats, would go down to the border with whips and chains and beat
Mhm.
these guys trying to sneak across the border and send them back because they realized it was a threat to their wages in their own areas. But something shifted in America. And so I got to ask the question, why? Like, what do they? I mean, I know there's what I suspect, but what do you see? And when in your career did you see a real shift away from, you know, both parties agreeing that we needed to not have, illegal aliens coming across the border?
Well, I saw that from the very beginning. Once I got out of my training status and I was able to catch my breath and understand what was going on, I write about this in my first book, Invaded. And I say after about 3.5 years, I was able to catch my breath. I became very good agent. I knew what was going on. And I began to look around, and 2 and 2 didn't equal 4. It was all a lie. It was smoke screen.
Mm.
And then after 9/11, that's when I really understood, oh, this is all a lie. So after 9/11, we were all literally in the Border Patrol chomping at the bit because we were like, okay, massive change is coming. And we sat there and we watched no change. In fact, we regressed. They created the DHS. They created completely backwards, completely asinine, unbelievable. Created ICE and Homeland Security, which has been a boondoggle from day one to today. It just doesn't work. Do you know that the number of quote ICE? I hate the term ICE agent because it's like it's not, there's no real ICE agents, but ICE agents. Do you know that since 9/11, when it was created to this day, they have not increased the manpower? Do you know that? Haven't
No.
increased it at all. Everyone says, well, all the ICE agents are going to go arrest the 50 million illegal aliens. And I'm like, really? How many ICE agents do you think there are? And people tell me, well, there's about 50,000. I said, why don't you try a little less than 6,000? And you begin to understand the absurdity of how we're going to have mass deportations. Is mass deportations happening right now? The answer is no, it's not. And you're talking, Nate, and this is very important. It's not just the economy. It's just not crime. It's schools, it's healthcare, it's societal cultural norms.
Yeah.
It's everything, illegal aliens. And you ask why.
Yeah. And it's
Well,
not
why?
just Mexicans coming across the border either. It's people that are coming from nations that have zero similarity to our country and zero respect for our Constitution. I'm talking about a lot of these people that have come from places like Somalia and have brought with them their ideologies and their worldview that is incompatible with the U.S. Constitution.
So why did they do that? They did that to replace us. That's just a fact. This is not my words, right? This is what it's going on across the globe. Third world savages are being pumped into Western white nations to change the demographics, period. Outside of Canada, America, and Western Europe, New Zealand, and Australia, all white. Are there any other nations being invaded? And the answer is no. The only other country that took in immigrants and now they're expelling them at a rapid rate, Japan. They're saying we want no more. So when you understand that this is a demographic time bomb, and to your point about they're not all Mexican, under Joe Biden, I want your audience to understand, because the arrest data in the United States Border Patrol shows less than 30% of the 12 million arrested in Border Patrol arrest data were Mexicans. The other 70+% were the other 185 to 186 nations out of 195 nations on planet Earth, meaning the entire globe came to America. And if you think for a second that this was done because of bad policy and it was not done strategically and intentionally, you're a fool. No, it's an absolute. My last year, I was a deputy patrol agent in charge in San Diego sector. My last year was Joe Biden's first year. I could not take it. I would not follow these unconstitutional orders, and I was able to retire. I'm telling you, I watched all of the executive orders, all the commands from DHS and Alejandro Mayorkas, who's a traitor, pour down into my inbox, and I watched them systematically destroy the border to open it up. I'll give you one example of thousands. Rodney Scott, who was the chief of the United States Border Patrol, and he is now the commissioner of Customs and Border Protection. Under oath, they asked him, what was said to you during your first meeting with Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of DHS? I'm almost quoting this, but I'm going to paraphrase it. He told Chief Scott, who's in charge of securing our nation's borders, told him, I want you to create as many avenues as possible to bring in as many people as possible. Why is that not treason? Where's the arrest? You and I talked offline about no justice. I'm telling you, as a guy that did this for 24 years and now I'm writing books and doing documentaries, I am telling you that I'm not jaded. I'm a realist and I see things very clearly. We do not live in a nation of law and order. We live in a nation that is a lie. It's a matrix. It's assimilation. We have been lied to for decades, and then now it's coming up because of all the information we get.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I think anybody who's being intellectually honest has to look at all of the things that have gone on in the previous administration that were clearly treasonous acts, clearly felonies, and yet not one of them has been arrested. Not one. Not one.
But Nate, why if we're going to make that allegation, and that not allegation so much, but just an observation, no one's been arrested. I went front and spoke and testified in front of Congress. I did a documentary on child sex trafficking. HHS Secretary RFK Jr. came out under oath and said the same thing I said, that the United States federal government participated in the sex slavery trafficking of children, and not one person's been arrested. And you have to ask yourself why. And I'm going to tell you what I believe. I believe that and I've been told this by people in high-ranking CIA, alphabet agency type guys, okay? So there is a significant percentage of our politicians who are pedophiles. And the ones that are not pedophiles know who the pedophiles are, and they remain silent. And when you begin to understand what they've done to the Epstein files, and you see what they did when they trafficked over 550,000 children into America and they're gone, they can't find them, then you begin to understand that our nation is run by pedophiles. And that's hard for our audience, my audience on my podcast, to hear that. But there is no other explanation. And when you begin to piece it together and listen to certain people that are in intelligence positions that have seen the videos and know who the pedophiles are, it's the only thing that makes sense. They're corrupt. Our nation, our leaders, they're not us. They're corrupt. They are blackmailed and they're bribed. How does someone like Congressman Crenshaw go into service 5 years ago or so as a congressman and have minimal assets, and now he's over $5 to $10 million in assets? How does a bartender like AOC that comes in with 30,000 in debt, now she's supposed to be in the 20 million range after what, 4 or 5 years? Well, it's not insider trading alone. It's impossible because they don't have enough capital to get high enough on. They have to have some more capital.
Yeah.
So what else are they doing? They're being bribed. They're being bribed through NGOs.
I saw firsthand when I blew the whistle that there was a massive network of money laundering that was being done through foundations. How many of our members of Congress have foundations on both sides of the aisle where money, and this is the other thing too, is I ran for Congress, so I had to see and learn the dirty side of politics. And that is that here's the facts, folks. If you think you're going to win in a national election, you're not going to win unless you are getting money through dark money pools. And that is all legal. And here's the crazy thing about a dark money pool. That money could be coming from anywhere, any country, any place in the world, 100% legal, all because the Supreme Court voted, or the Supreme Court basically ruled on, was it the U.S. versus Citizens United, to give citizenship to corporations, which basically gives them rights under the Constitution, and you cannot restrict the free speech of a corporation, which means that the problem with that, of course, is that you can't arrest a corporation. You know, a corporation doesn't swear allegiance, to and has no allegiance to the U.S. And many of them are multinational corporations. And so this is a real problem because basically money is coming in from all around the world and from all different sorts of resources and sources, and it's all legal. And that money then goes, through these foundations, through these LLCs to fund advertising for elections. And as much as people would like to think that, advertising may have that little, may have little impact, it has every impact. Because the reality is that most people are, I'll just say it, they're too dumb to actually do the research and figure out what these people are about that they're voting for in the primary, which is the most important part of the election. And so what they end up with is whoever had the most money to spend on name recognition. And that is the person who gets in there on the primary. And then depending on which way it leans, because we're so polarized, it's going to be either Republican or the Democrat that gets elected. And that is, unfortunately, that is the way it goes. And so these people with this whole system of payment that happens through these types of things, I'm certain that has a lot to do with why decisions are being made the way they're being made that seem to not be in the interest of the American people, but seem to be in the interest of foreign nations or in the interest of corporations or in the interest of special interest groups That's why.
Well,
And until
you
that
have
changes,
Elon.
nothing's going to happen.
No, and Elon Musk came out with Doge and said the major money laundering mechanism is
Yeah.
the NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and
Absolutely.
people. And I detail this in the way they did immigration, how they funneled hundreds of billions of dollars through international and domestic NGOs, and this is how it works. So I have, let's say, Catholic Charities or HIAS or whatever, and the federal government gives $5 billion to Catholic Charities. Well, there's Catholic Charities they have subgroups, sub NGOs. So then a politician puts their spouse in one of the lower level NGOs. So when the money goes to Catholic Charities and dribbles down, now it's been cleaned. It got cleaned from Catholic Charities, and now it ends up in NGO XYZ, and a senator's wife is on the board. She's making $300,000 a year, plus she gets an annual bonus of $1 million. What? Yeah, this is how it's all done. And this is Elon Musk, goes back to our point. Elon Musk said that I'm afraid to talk about this because I feel like I'm going to get killed. And then he said, if I go into like Social Security and I pull out more fraud and corruption, the whole system's going to collapse on itself. No one's been arrested.
Yeah.
He even, if you go back and listen to him when he talked, he says, we found one man that had 400,000 Social Security numbers. And he goes, I think they would go arrest him first. They haven't. They haven't.
Okay, let's go back to, on that note, let's go to this real quick here, because this I think ties into it. 50 million illegals.
Uh-huh.
They certainly didn't get legal Social Security numbers.
No.
So whose Social Security numbers are they using? Well, I can tell you one, and this is just a perfect example. I have a son who is disabled. We have been going through all of the legal procedures to try to get him assistance, which I paid into my entire life to try to get him some help. And we got a notification that we could not proceed because my son apparently has a job in California.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What? That's news to us. Obviously, it's an illegal using his Social Security number. And now we have to go through all of the process now, and the whole case has been delayed. And now we have to go through the process to try to rectify that because, of course, guilty until proven innocent.
Well, okay. And also, so you have that. You have fraudulent Social Security numbers, and then you have the fact that because Mayorkas created a parole system out of thin air, completely out of thin air, and so as illegal aliens were coming across the border, they were handing out Social Security numbers. They have found right now minimum almost 10 million illegal aliens were giving Social Security numbers. Kristi Noem comes out 2 weeks ago, and it's radio silence, and I can't believe it, that DHS has now found 6,000 people that were on the terrorist watch list were arrested, given Social Security numbers, and released into America. 6,000 individuals on the terrorist watch list were given Social Security numbers. I don't think, I honestly, and I don't blame your audience or anybody, because I had to live it after 24 years and I do all the research. I honestly do not believe the average American has any idea what our federal government did to our country, has done for decades, but more specifically in the last 4 years. I know for certain that the American public has no idea what vulnerability and how much danger America is in right now. Have zero concept of what they did and why did they do that.
Do you remember there was a whistleblower that came forward during Obama's administration? He was one of the founding charter members of DHS after 9/11, and his job basically was designing the database that was tracking all of these very dangerous um, terrorists around the world. And the Obama administration saw to it that all of those names were deleted out of this database. After years of working hard to try to collect this intelligence, he saw to it that that got wiped. So the whistleblower on that, his name was Philip Haney, and he was a devout Christian. You know, not a particularly interesting guy. I mean, he worked obviously in interesting stuff, but just your average guy. He ends up coming up with a book that he was writing a second book, and he was going to expose something big. And he was wearing a flash drive around his neck, and I think it was Louis Gohmert was a friend of his, and actually spoke about this on the House floor, because Philip Haney ends up supposedly committing suicide at a park and ride, and when there was no reason for him to. I mean, he was getting a position within the administration to do some of the work that he was excited about. He was in the midst of getting ready to publish this book. He was getting married. I mean, everything was going good for this guy. All of a sudden, he commits suicide, and of course, they ruled it that even though he died by suicide by a gunshot to the chest. Who takes a gun and shoots themselves in the chest? Doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of things that don't add up on it. But interestingly enough, they never found the thumb drive that he had around his neck. And Louis Gohmert came forward and admitted on the House floor that he had been called by his friend, Philip Haney, telling him that that if something happened to him, he did not kill himself.
Mhm.
And this story, of course, is what we hear all the time, right? This is what happened with the Epstein files, right? With the gal who was the main witness.
Yeah,
And
Virginia Guthrie.
Virginia Guthrie. She said, if I end up dead, it was not by my own hand.
No.
And then she ends up dead, supposedly due to suicide. And this happens over and over again. And this is why, even in this, the thing is that, if they're in America, that tends to be the way they take them out, right? If they're in a foreign country, they'll take them out any other way. You think about my father-in-law was just talking to me about it tonight. He was talking to me about, he's been reading through the Panama Papers, which is basically these documents that were exposed, and they're online, folks. You can go look at them, but they expose all the money laundering that has been going on, and influence peddling that has been going on. And there were all of these documents that got exposed. And of course, the Clintons are right in there. George Soros is in there. Bill Gates is in there. Whole bunch of folks. And the journalist who exposed all that was killed in a car bomb. There is a cabal that is running things, and that is, behind the scenes, ensuring that people don't talk. And I said it, I've said it for a long time. They start by bribing you. If that doesn't work, then they blackmail you. And if that doesn't work, then they kill you. And it's that simple.
Well,
and until those people are prosecuted, put in prison, I don't see how anything's going to change.
okay, well, let's go down that road, because I believe everything you say about this. But to understand that this is not like a cabal of 5 people, right?
No.
And we can round up 5 people. We're talking about probably thousands upon thousands. So my question that I ask people is, we're hurtling down this road. There's no off ramps anymore. Nobody cares about getting off. They're just getting rich, fat, and happy. They're powerful. There's no changing. We're not legislating ourselves out of this moral rot that we're in, Nate. It's not going to happen. Donald Trump's not going to do it. He's proven he will not do it. So how does this change? I mean, we keep going down this road. We're going to die as a nation. We may be called the United States of America. White population is, in less than 15 years, will be the minority in our country. Will be the first time we'll be a majority minority in our country. Who voted for that? I didn't vote for that. So America will disappear. or we're going to have to physically, kinetically, through fighting, take it back. Either way, it's a disaster. And I don't think people are ready. They don't want to hear this. I think they're just like, we'll deal with it in 15 years. No. You're missing the point. It will already be over with in 15 years.
Yeah.
And if
Well,
you think, yeah, but I don't think that you can't legislate yourself out of this.
No.
Why do you think Mandami is the governor of, the mayor of New York City? Is it because a bunch of dumb liberals? Some of it, but people don't understand. You have massive amounts of illegal and legal immigrants in New York City, and they usurp the vote. How do you think?
Here's the other thing too. Even if they don't vote, and this is important for people to understand. I don't honestly believe, and I think this is evident by the fact that you don't see a whole lot of arrests on this. But I honestly don't believe that 90% of the illegals that are coming into this country are going to the polls. I would say probably not even 10% are going to the polls. What I believe is happening, and this is evidenced by what I've seen in my investigations in election integrity, and I've done a lot. I've done more than most, I would say, in terms of lawful investigations into election integrity, including some that have been ordered by grand juries. What I will tell you is what I've seen is that the voter registration has been messed with in almost every state. The voter registration has been loaded with illegals that are there, and somehow those votes end up getting counted and then deleted after the elections. Like the names get removed out of the voter rolls so that the evidence is gone. But I guarantee that those names are being used especially in blue states where they allow mail-in ballots, or where they allow people to vote without a user or without a voter ID, or they do not require proof of citizenship. Every single blue state is like that. And one of the things that they changed, and this is very important, that they changed this, and it has happened in every single blue state. They have allowed illegal aliens to get driver's licenses. Why is that? Because that's when you go in and you can register to vote right now.
Yeah.
That
And people don't understand when the NGOs, when the illegal aliens came into, let's say they came into San Diego and the Catholic Charities or Jewish Family Services got them. When they registered for all of their goodies, they registered them to vote. So when they left, where do you think all the ballots came to? They came to that hotel or that shelter. Then when the NGOs captured them in New York or Illinois or wherever they went to, then they registered to vote again. I'm still shocked that Donald Trump was awarded the presidency. I thought for sure that there's going to be so much voting fraud.
Overwhelmed is the only thing that can make sense. I think people were I think there was a lot of Democrats that were just despondent by their options. Had they run a better candidate and had Joe Biden bowed out earlier, I don't know if it would have been such a win for Trump. And which should scare us about the next election, by the way.
Oh, we're going to lose. We're going to lose because the Republicans are gutless and the Republicans are a uniparty. They haven't codified anything that Donald Trump has done. Here's like the broader on our discussion today is, where's the urgency to arrest these people? Like, I don't understand Donald Trump, because they stole the election from you in 2020. No one even debates it anymore. The left has already abdicated. Of course we stole it, but you're never going to do anything to us. And then Donald Trump gets almost assassinated. They try to bankrupt his family.
Yeah,
they're going to go after
the law.
They throw him in jail, and yet there's no urgency to go after these people. I don't understand it, and I don't think he's a better man than me, right? So meaning, if I was in his position, I would have already arrested all of these traitors, all of them, and I would have done it on day one. Like, I'm take my oath to be president, and right then I would go, I'd snap my fingers, and all the federal agents would walk down those aisles and start arresting every single person that is guilty of treason. And I would get them through the system as fast as I can, and I would punish them to the fullest extent of the law. but he has no desire to do it. And I don't know why not. Why not, Trump? I don't get it. I don't.
The only thing
Nate.
that I can think, because I've thought that too, he's got nothing to lose. He can only run. He can't run again. So
Well, wait a minute. He doesn't have nothing to lose. They're going to throw his ass in jail again, or they're going to try to kill him. They're going to try to take everything he owns. They're going to try to destroy his family. I'm surprised no one's killed his grandchildren yet. That's what I really thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
So he does have a lot to lose. That's why I don't know why this man's not doing what he needs to do.
Well,
I don't mean to interrupt you, but
maybe the only thing I can think of is that the rot, especially within the FBI and the DOJ, was so deep that they're still trying to ferret out who all the secret moles are, who all the people are that are, and maybe, and this is just wishful thinking, but maybe towards the end of his term, there will be mass arrests. But I'll be honest with you, I am not holding my breath on that, not one bit, because I think the problem is that in a lot of these cases, it's already past the we're getting close to, or have already passed statute of limitations in many of these cases.
Yeah, but treason, there's no statute of limitation on treason.
But treason's another, that's a tricky one to prove. You have to, there's exigent circumstances that have to be in play for that to be, charged, right? And but there are plenty of other things that do have, like the one statute I don't understand why they haven't gone after these guys and used, especially guys like George Soros and those types, is racketeering. I mean, why not? It's like that's what that whole law was created for. Was
because they don't want to, Nate. They don't want to,
and that's what concerns me, is that they do have laws that they could use, like racketeering or money laundering, which comes with 10 years, I think, is the statute of limitations on that. There are plenty of laws. Or how about deprivation of rights under color of law for all of those within the FBI and DOJ who committed, basically violations of other people's civil rights. These things, I don't understand what is going on and why they have not done it. But to what we were talking about earlier in regards to why are they allowing this to happen, it's one thing for these guys. I think it's clearly, it's about getting people in this country so they can use those names for voting, because they clearly are not winning people in their hearts and minds. But
No.
I do think that there's something that, going back to when I was mentioning about, it's not just, Mexicans coming across the border. We're talking about Islamic extremists coming to this country in droves, and many of them coming here through the, not through immigration initially. They were brought in here through, what's the term I'm looking for?
It's refugee resettlements.
Yes, thank you. Refugee resettlement, which, by the way, most people have no idea that refugee status isn't a permanent thing. It's supposed to be, you're here until the war's over in your country, and then you go back. But
They
that is
never
not
go
how
back,
it's
though.
treated here. And you can go to places now in Michigan and other places around the country to where it doesn't even feel like America anymore. There's a term, though, and I was curious. So I was looking this up because it seems just weird how when they move in to an area, they don't assimilate and they completely change the laws, the culture, the religion of that area that they move into. They don't just, they don't even just come in and kind of pepper themselves amongst, the community. Like we've seen, with some countries and some nations that come, people, nationalities that come here, they maintain their culture, but they still integrate, right? Like you have Little Italy, or you have, Chinatown, or you have, different regions where they might have like a little area that, kind of becomes their own and has restaurants and stuff. They still fundamentally, they become Americans, but that's not what's happening with many of these Islamic groups. And one of the things that people need to understand why that is they have a term called hijra. And the Hijra doctrine, or civilization, or civilizational jihad by immigration. It's a real thing, folks. Look it up. And it goes all the way back to Muhammad and the whole migration from Mecca to Medina. This is what they are doing here. And if people in our government don't recognize that, we will be no different than the UK, 10 years from now.
But Nate, how can our government not know this is happening? Like, I understand that some of the politicians are the dumbest people on planet Earth, but the ones that are really
No.
pulling the strings, they know. They absolutely know. Look, when you look at what did we do after 9/11 when supposedly, I put quotations around 9/11 because there's so many questions.
Yeah, there are.
But we're learning, we've been told this fantasy that 19 goat herders flew jumbo jet liners that they couldn't even fly planes. But okay, let's just go down that narrative. 19 Islamic jihadists. What is our response in America been since 9/11? To import 4 times the amount of Muslims into America.
Yeah.
Look, Islam is not compatible
New York is a
with the
perfect
West.
example.
Yeah.
Look at New York. The ground zero for the attack, and yet an immigrant Muslim is now their mayor.
I hope New York City burns to the ground because it will. I will tell you right now, there's no outcome in the next 18 months to 2 years except people trying to physically escape New York. Police officers, firemen, paramedics, they're all gone. They're all leaving in droves. They don't want to work for this socialist pig, this
It's kind of
commie.
interesting, it is interesting. It's like the foreshadowing of that, of that movie years ago in the 80s, right? Was it 1981? I think that
Yeah,
movie
it's
came out.
predictive programming, right?
Yeah, right.
But I don't
Mm,
know. Islam's not compatible with the West.
No.
Our founding fathers wanted no Muslims in the country. They didn't want
No.
anybody Muslims to be in the legislature, in representative. Look, there's so much that needs to be done. Look,
Most of the state constitutions required you to be a Christian
yes,
in order
we're
to
a
be able
Christian
to
nation.
run for government.
We were founded by settlers that were white Christians. Our nation was a predominant, super majority, 90+% white Christian nation. Why do we, as white people, and why do we apologize for that? I don't understand it. Like the quote melting pot. Look, 1960s, 1970s, about 90% white, 9% black, and whatever. Nobody cares if there's an ebb and flow of whites, Hispanics, and blacks. No one cares. But when you infused 50 million people from the third world of the continent of Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America, and you destroyed our demographics, and you're supposed to tell me that I'm supposed to be okay with the demographics, the cultural, societal beliefs of my nation are obliterated, then Nate, now you blame me as a white man for being a white nationalist, a racist. I'm telling you, there is a pushback right now that's happening in America. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it because they're scared to death when you start talking about white men when they've had it and they're rising up. It scares people, but it's happening in America. This is not hyperbole. This is a factual thing that's happening right now. And if people want to ignore it and act as if it's not going to happen, that's to your own detriment because it is.
Well, I think we have taken the high road and tried to not assert any kind of like pride on the basis of race or anything like that. And I think that has largely been what has driven that. But the problem is, and I think it's honorable and I think that's good. But the problem is we've allowed others to assert pride and assert, all kinds of stuff on the basis of race and other, and so it's a double standard, number one. The other thing that we've allowed to happen in this country, which I think has been a terrible thing, has been the importation of the Frankfurt School and their ideology of cultural Marxism, which basically made its way into Columbia University and then spread throughout our university system. And that has been a system designed to instead of trying to conquer us on the basis of a class system, they decided that it was easier, to divide us on the basis of race and other, immutable characteristics, which then, again, it forces, it forces those that are white, right, to have to repent or apologize, for the sins of their ancestors or whatever, even though the fact is that it was the European quote unquote colonizers or settlers or whatever the hell they want to call them that brought civilization to this land, that brought the greatest nation on the face of the planet in terms of, being able to give people equal opportunity to raise themselves up from nothing, to, come here with no family lineage, with no, with no money, and work hard and make something of themselves. And the truth is that that's really what our nation is about. And so I think it's kind of it's a double whammy attack, right? One saying that we're going to restrict whites from being able to be proud of themselves or any contribution they've made, to this nation, and at the same time we're going to let every other Tom, Dick, and Harry be proud of either their race or their sexual proclivity or whatever they want to be proud of, their religion, anything. But if you're a white Christian, no, you can't be proud of that. That's not
Well,
that's not
I mean, it's a whole nother topic too, but
Yeah.
you want to start talking about the white Christian propaganda, right? We have been propagandized to believe that God was, and I'm going to quote this guy that he's a scholar of the Shroud of Turin, the Western European gay Jesus, that there's a effeminate gay Jesus that
Yeah.
we have to bow down to the Muslims. We have to bow down and apologize as white Christians and let people run us over. And
Yeah.
we have what, ask anybody this question that has been around 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s like I have, and ask them, is America better today than it was then? Honestly, let's sit down and let's have a conversation. And everybody that is intellectually honest would say, absolutely not. Absolutely not. The world that we live in today does not resemble anything in the past. And today it is grotesquely worse.
The problem, I
Grotesquely
think, is
worse.
we've walked away from the very values, those Christian values that honestly, I think have made our nation great and have given us great success. And there are certainly there's contributions, right, that have come to our country from other places, and there are great people who've immigrated here and done great things. Even within like, but that doesn't negate the fact that it is our founding principles, right? The ideals behind Western civilization that have been at the core of what has allowed all those other contributions to make this nation a great place. And that is really what it boils down to. Now, I do think that we have a problem, though, and that is that you talk about backlash. And I do worry that some of the backlash that's going on right now, even within the Republican, we've already seen, how divided the Democrat Party is.
Mhm.
And how they are basically destroying themselves from the inside out. And unfortunately, what is going to be left over when the ashes have all settled, I believe, is going to be, more of the AOCs and the Mamdanis and the far left extremist Marxists. What I am concerned about is that the Republican Party, if we're not careful, we could see that same kind of fracturing, happen here. And I'm hoping that we will figure out a way to work through the problems that we see that are going on, acknowledge, the issues that are going on. Like we were talking about, before we came on a little bit about how there's been some of that fracturing happening within the Republican Party, within the MAGA movement. And I don't even like that term MAGA movement because it ties it, I think, too closely to Trump. But the reality is I do like the idea of the America First movement. And it's not doesn't mean America first or America only. It means America first, kind of like when you're on the airplane and you hear the stewardess say, hey, if we have turbulence and the bag drops, you need to take care of yourself first, and then you can take care of others. And that's biblical. That's right out of the Bible. It says that that anyone who does not take care of their own, he's worse than an infidel. And so we have to take care of our own. We've got to take care of our nation first. We can't be, if you also hear about the in the Bible, there's a principle of a man who is going to be a bishop, right? He should be a somebody who's taking care of his own family and who's got his own children in line and are doing well. If somebody can't manage their own household, how can they manage, others, right? Or a greater cause or
Mhm.
purpose. The United States, if we can't take care of our own, if we can't protect our own borders, why are we even involved in trying to protect other people's borders? If we can't protect, our own economy, why are we involved in propping up other economies? We've got to take care of our business first here and make sure that we have cleaned house and removed the rot and the infestation, if you will, of a lot of these ideals that are not American. Get them out of our country. I'm not talking about making free speech illegal or anything like that, but certainly there are standards that we can impose, and one of those is, look, if the U.S. government is involved, why are we in promoting anything that goes against American values? Why are we promoting anything that goes against, our success story, if you will? Why are we promoting it? Why are we paying for it? All the NGO money that was going out, that was corrupting other nations. I don't honestly believe that millions of dollars were going to Mozambique for circumcisions. I think money was going there supposedly for that and was being redirected, large portions of that redirected back to, other NGOs and things like that to fund, to finance and funnel money back into politics and into, basically manipulating people to do what they want. But all of that, the most important thing that we could do as a nation would be to mandate transparency at every level of the government.
It'll never happen.
I agree. I don't think
It'll
it'll
never
happen.
happen.
And I
And I,
honestly, I don't feel like, just as a student of history, I don't believe that any nation on earth will last forever. And I certainly don't believe that America, at least as it is today, is going to last forever. I pray that it lasts at least for my lifetime. And it's interesting. I look at, right now in my church, we're studying Second Kings. And anybody that wants to get a realistic view of the rise and fall of nations should read First and Second Kings, because that's what it all is about. First and Second Chronicles, First and Second Kings. There's two different books, but there's four books, but they basically parallel each other. And you can watch the rise and fall of kings in Israel and in Judah and Israel, and see how when these nations or these leaders were immoral, it ultimately cost those nations through God's judgment. And I honestly think that's where we are headed as a nation. And I hope and pray that we can withstand that judgment a little bit longer, and certainly there were times where God relented for a little bit. Eventually that judgment came, but where he held it off because of a good king here or there. And I think, Donna, that's where we are right now in America. I think we have staved off, some of the judgment of God. Call it the 40 million babies that have been slaughtered, through abortion, or whatever other national sin that we've committed. But the fact is that in pedophilia, like how much of that has been driven and been going on under the knowledge of government leaders, right? That can't come without a cost. Eventually, there's going to be a judgment that I think we will see in this nation as a result of those types of things. So the only thing we can do is we can pray and seek God and repent and ask for his forgiveness and to stave that off a little longer. And I'm not going to say I've lost faith in government being able to do anything, but I don't think that any of this I don't think that we're going to turn back the clock or the tide. I think we've gone too far.
Mhm.
Like you mentioned, 50 million illegals, and how many are they removing a year?
Oh, they're removing 600 to 1,000 a day.
Okay, so that how many years would it take us at that rate?
125.
Yeah, so that's not going to happen. So
Right.
we can just be realistic here. That's not going to happen.
Yeah,
We
but
might get
why can't it happen though, Nate? Why can't it happen? Let me give you an example.
sure.
Why are we going city to city? Like we went from LA, then we skipped over to so and so, then we with Chicago. Now we're down in Charlotte. Now we're going to leave Charlotte to go to New Orleans. Charlotte has 150,000 known illegal aliens. They've arrested 500 to 600. Now we're going to go to New Orleans. What in
Well,
God's
how
name
about
are you
this,
doing?
though? Well, so here's something, right? You got a list of cities and states that have sanctuary policies that fly in the face
Mhm.
of federal law. Why have those governors and those mayors not been arrested for obstruction of justice?
Because
For
no one in
obstructing
Washington,
federal law?
D.C. wants to solve the problem, Nate. You know it as well as I
I know.
do. They're making money off of it. And not nickels and dimes. They're making millions, if not billions of dollars off the pain and suffering of America. I don't have hope like you do.
Well,
I have no hope.
the H-1B visa, for example, that program right there, right? It's been a program that has been largely supported and pushed by Republicans.
Yep.
And yet, what does it do? Is it drives down wages for those in the tech sector largely, so people in my line of work, and I've seen it. And it adds to the problem of security in our country. I mean, we just had a major cyber breach with Microsoft Azure when they found out that they had over 1,000 Chinese nationals that they had hired and brought here under the H-1B visa program,
Well,
and they were working basically in these areas where they're dealing with cloud systems that are provided to U.S. government agencies.
yeah, but Nate, you're missing the point. You see, the Chinese and the Indians are more talented than us, right? Per Donald Trump. And you're going to tell me Donald Trump's going to win the midterms and then he's going to turn over to a Republican president? There's not going to happen. When you sit there and you bring in 600,000 Chinese national students to where my son now has to compete with a Chinese national for a university spot because Trump says they're smarter and more talented than my son. You know what, President Trump, from one of your biggest supporters, go pound sand. We've had
I
it.
would ask the question, I would respond to that statement with, okay, let's just say that you're correct. Why? How has the American education system failed our students, and what are they doing to fix it? I mean, honestly, we do have a problem in this country. We have a problem, but I think it's a large cultural problem, and it's not one that existed when you and I were in school. But it certainly is a problem today where you've got kids that don't even know whether they're male or female or whether they're even I mean, the mental illness in this country is on a scale of like nothing I've ever seen in my life.
Huh? Absolutely.
And I do think that plays into it, right? I mean, if you're an employer and you have an option to hire somebody who, you know, you don't know what their mental state is. You don't know whether or not they are willing to work extra hours to get things done, but somebody else is willing to do it, and somebody else isn't going to question things. I mean, and there's problems on both sides of that. Because again, I do think that there's a lot of people that are being brought here just to be used as in a way, a quasi-slave labor. The problem is, though, is clearly something's going on, and they're not fixing it. And I think part of it is I think social media has become a contagion, a social contagion. And I don't
Yeah,
think
but we come
dealing
full
with it
circle though, Nate. We come full circle.
Yeah.
We brought in third world peasants
Yeah.
by the tens of millions. They're illiterate in their own language. They have no skills. They have no societal norms as we do. And then they're breeding at a 5-to-1 ratio of Americans. And are they breeding people that are quantum physics experts, or are they breeding more peasants? And before everybody goes, well, that is really harsh. Really? Why don't we look at our test scores and see, and then start extracting by immigration, and you'll be shocked to see American students are actually very high up, like in the top 10 in everything. But when you add illiterate peasants and their illiterate children into our school system, And then we have to now take their test scores that are in the teens. I was in education for about 2 years, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. Not like they're like on the cusp of passing. We're talking the teens, like 13, proficient in 13 percentile. So the idea that American students don't have it, no. All of the trash that you brought into my country is offset, has destroyed our education system.
Well, that's certainly true of some countries, and it's weird, right? So it's a mix, because certainly we have a lot of people that come here from certain countries where they're higher achievers, right? Especially coming from certain parts of Asia and whatnot. But then you got people coming from other parts of the world that are coming here illiterate, that are not contributing, that are basically starting off life in welfare and staying on it generationally. That is a problem. And but either way, I don't care if they come here and they're geniuses, or if they come here and they're illiterate. At the end of the day, if you come here and you are not if you come here illegally, number one, you got to go. And number two, if you come here and you have to be on welfare, you got to go. I don't think anybody should be able to come into this country who's never paid into the system and be able to get put on welfare right away. That's just absolutely should
Nate,
never
that's
happen.
against it, but you understand that there's already a law. It's against the law.
It's clearly not
But
enforced.
no, it's not enforced because why? Because they all get rich off of it and they all gain power off of it. Why do you think Minnesota, which was 99% white, now has Little Mogadishu in Minneapolis? And now we have Ilhan Omar, who married her brother. We have Somalians that in 1 year have siphoned almost $400 million off of just autism alone and stolen that money. I have had it. I'm beyond the limit to give two craps about what anybody's feelings anymore. I want the America that is mine. I have ownership of my America, and I want everyone else that does not have ownership, I want them the hell out. And I'll tell you what, if you can't do it, Donald Trump, you don't have the stones to do it, guess what? I know there's another man outside waiting to take your spot that has the stones to do it. And when he does come in, he is going to be, all of you leftists and rhinos are going to beg God for those days of Donald Trump, because the guy that's waiting in the wings is not going to be Donald Trump. He's going to come in with a sword and he's going to slaughter people to get us back to where we go. And that's the fear, Nate.
That's my fear, is that if things keep going the way they're going, that what's going to end up happening, and this is what I've been predicting for a while. We've already seen it, right? During the Biden administration, you had mass exodus out of places like New York, of American citizens basically leaving up and saying, I'm out, I'm moving. You had people leaving California. You had people leaving basically Maryland. I mean, I'm a perfect example of that. I left Maryland, moved here to West Virginia. Why did I move to West Virginia? Because I wanted to live in a state that had the same values, had the same religion, where most of my neighbors basically are similar to me. They have the same values, the same beliefs, the same religion. And not everybody here is the same. But the fact is that I knew that this would be like going back in time to the way America once was. Florida has been kind of another interesting situation where a lot of conservatives have moved to Florida. And I believe that what's happening is that we're going to see this fractioning, and it's going to continue. And eventually the blue states are going to become bluer. The red states are going to become redder. And I'm not an expert in this. I'd love to have somebody on my show who is, that have studied the Civil War or maybe the American Revolution, to understand what was going on socially at the time prior to those events. But I suspect that we will find that eventually it will get to the point where enough people are of one belief system in a state that they will resist the federal government to the point of saying, we've had it. We're not giving you another dime, not one more red cent of our tax dollars. We are out. And there will be a massive separation. And the only question will be as to whether or not there will be another revolution or another civil war to try to maintain and hold the union together. I hope not. But I do think that's where eventually things go. I mean, people were talking about it before Trump won. I've never heard people talk like this, but it was everywhere.
Mhm.
Conservatives were talking about if Trump loses another election due to it being stolen, then we're done.
Mhm.
We will no longer, we will fight to basically get our state to leave the union. And that has been, and that is a legitimate reason to leave the union, stealing of elections, because that
Mhm.
is actually something that the whole point and purpose of the union coming together, right, was this idea that if we're going to agree to have a singular executive, because there was arguments going back and forth between the different states as to whether or not they would have a singular president or would be ran by committee. And if it's going to be a singular president, a singular executive, then there has to be fair elections. And if people don't feel like their elections are fair, then they won't tolerate it for very much longer. I don't believe that people will tolerate it for very long.
No, I don't either. I just don't think America is at that point yet. But you have no idea, right? Until maybe
Yeah,
something sparks it, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it gets to the point where Americans just say, I've had it. And then when you start now you let's say you have a balkanization. Let's say 35 states are red, which it is, and about 15 are blue. And
mhm,
now the blue states start demanding because they're going to crumble, right? They're financially going to crumble. They're going to start asking for more money from the red states. Then the red states are going to
yeah,
say, "No, we're now called the United States of Middle America, whatever you want to say." And then
yeah.
they're going to have the internal army and military, and they're going to say, "Okay, let's go to
Well,
war."
there's an interesting thing though with the blue states. If you notice, they are along the coastlines. They hold and control the ports. That basically everything that's shipped in, shipped out of this country. There's a lot of commerce that goes through them, and that may keep them propped up for some time. But eventually, it's going to make its way here, and we're already beginning to experience. We were talking about it before the break. That why is it that we live in a country that has more oil than any other nation on earth,
Mhm.
and yet it's expensive as hell for me to fill up my gas tank or to get propane for my house or to have electricity? Why are these still a problem? Why has electricity prices not come down? Why has gas prices, propane not come down? I mean, for crying out loud, we live in America. It shouldn't be. And so the only thing I can figure is that there are still manipulations that are happening, within the energy industry. Things that are still happening. Like, I thought Trump did away with all this nonsense about, green energy crap and all of that, because that's what's largely, I think, driven the price of everything up. But yeah, there's some problems that I think eventually, when people can't afford to eat, when they can't afford to survive, when they can't own a home anymore and their rent prices are going up, I think that it will lead to civil disorder and social collapse.
Well, we're getting close to there, man. The average age now for the first time buyer is 40.
Yeah,
40.
yeah.
So with that comes no
Well, and
birth
we're
rate.
not, yeah, and we're not the, that kind of, like, they have, I think, is it Japan? They have like 99-year mortgages. Because I mean, our economy's pretty bad. Theirs, I would say, is even worse. But the only difference is that they have a very homogenous society, and they have a very, because of that, it creates a lot of social order, and so people tend to just kind of accept things, and just accept that is the way it is. People
Are
are
you
not that
telling
way
me
here.
that you're telling me that diversity is not really a strength then? Is that what you're telling me, Nate?
I'm saying that diversity, it ultimately will, I think it will lead to our own collapse, because of the fact.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, a perfect, how long has Japan been around?
Hundreds
Thousands
of
of
years.
years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Been
At
around over
least.
1,000 years as a nation. Why? Because they are largely homogenous. And
Mhm.
there's some really good books on this, folks. For those that are listening, I know these are tough subjects to talk about because they do border on, oh, I don't want to get called a racist, or I don't want to get called a xenophobe or whatever. But here's the facts. You got to look at it from a factual standpoint. A very good book that I read, and he's a great black author, uh, Thomas Sowell. or Soul.
Awesome. Incredible, man.
And one of the best books I ever read with him was, I think it was called White Liberals and Black Rednecks.
Yep. I have that book.
Great book. And I've read a ton of his books, but he really understands and breaks down economics and understands the issues of, he really breaks down like North England, in New England, in that area, and how education was so important there. And that's why so much of the wealth of the nation, really kind of sprung from there. But now it's become, it's become, filled with a lot of this cultural relativism, because of the universities, Ivy League schools have been adopting that. I think everything really boils down to whether or not we survive or not is going to be education. If we don't fix the problems that we have, and right now some of it is getting fixed naturally, because honestly, COVID, the one silver lining from that was that more people decided to homeschool after that than any other time in our nation. And maybe that, just that alone, might save, this next generation. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think, I think either. My belief is there's a everything's tied to religion and spiritual belief in God.
Yeah.
If there's not a revival
I
to
agree.
back to Christian values, not Judeo-Christian, Christian values, outside of that, I see a violent, painful reorganization of America.
When you look at, when you think about that, I think about Charlie Kirk's death, right? It seemed like a massive revival was kicking off after his death. And I think it's still going, although I do think it started to wane a little bit. But clearly, I saw, even myself, I was impacted, and I think part of it was just the fact that seeing it. Like somebody sent me the video, and I didn't even have a chance to even, it wasn't even censored, because it went out so quickly. And just seeing this man who was innocent murdered before my eyes for speaking the truth and often speaking about Christ. That, I think, impacted a lot of people. I heard story after story of people just it impacting them in ways that they never even understood, why. But I think that's part of what Thomas Jefferson understood when he talked about the tree of liberty, from time to time needed to be refreshed by the blood of, he doesn't say just tyrants, but he says by patriots and tyrants and patriots, basically that bloodshed, that it's natural. He says it's natural manure. And unfortunately, tragedy and those types of things are the only things I think that bring a nation back from the brink. And so I pray and hope that Charlie Kirk's death was not in vain, and that something good can come from it, and that more and more people will begin to listen and listen to the things that he was saying, because I think he was on point with a lot of what he was saying. I think a lot of what he was saying was right on the money.
Well, we're gonna, but here's another. I mean, Charlie Kirk, we're never going to find out the truth about that situation either. As a guy in law enforcement, I'm looking at it and I'm
Probably
like, this
not.
is a boondoggle. We're not going to learn about him. We're not going to learn about crooks. There is no law and order.
They haven't had this guy, we haven't been able to watch any of the trials or anything, going on really with him, But if Charlie Kirk's message can be amplified, then we might just see some hearts and minds changed.
I agree, and I hope that happens. It just, here's what this is the missing piece. The missing piece is not the message and people digesting the message. It's then turning that into an action.
Yeah.
And I don't know if in this very, very effeminate kind of beta male environment that our nation is in, do we have enough alphas that will stand up and take our country back? I believe we do. I hope that I'm not proven wrong. But when I look around and I see the beta males, it's maddening to me. But I will say this, as I know we're pushing up on time, is my son's generation, he's 14, and the generation right above him, till about 30. They're going to change America. And it's not us anymore. We're
You're
getting
right.
too old. It's them. And I'll tell you, and this is what scares everyone to death. Everyone in the left and all the rhinos in the Republican Party, these kids, these young kids and these young adults, they despise everything. They know that their fathers have been lied to for generations. Their grandfathers and their fathers have been lied to. They know they've been lied to, and they look up to the generation right above them, and they see they're unhappy. They have committing suicide. They have no jobs. The men trying to place tampons inside their bodies. Men can have babies. They're watching this and they're going, "I want none of that, none of it." And they're becoming. There's a Christian renaissance. There's a push to Catholicism. There's a push back to Christ and Christianity, and no one in power can do anything about it because everyone in power will be dead in 20 years, and these kids will be ruling the world.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
believe
think
that.
there's been a lot of talk about even like groups like Pew and some others have done a lot of research into this, and they're saying that this this new generation, I think they're like the Gen Alpha,
Hmm.
they are more conservative. They are they are more conservative than any other generation since World War II,
Yeah.
and it's because they unlike other generations, they have all the data at their fingertips
Yep.
and they know how to use it and they know how to dig and find things. I think the last couple of generations have had the media onslaught of social media without the advantage of AI, honestly. And so the new generation is growing up in a time where they're seeing that you can't just believe everything that you see. You can't just believe everything that you hear. And they are finding ways around it. We live in a really a decentralized media now. They have access to multiple platforms all over the world where they can get their news from. There are some problems with kind of the algorithm, right? In that it will just put people into um, an echo chamber. That's still a problem, but I think they're growing up in a time where they're understanding that from the get-go, whereas previous generations, the last two especially, Gen Z and the millennial generation, they kind of, our generation, we're old now.
Yeah.
We're irrelevant in many ways, because you're right. The things that we say and do aren't going to have the impact that
No.
that carries on into the next generation.
No. I hope. I don't want my generation. My generation and my father's generation destroyed this country. Destroyed it.
Yeah.
Allowed it, and we allowed it to happen. I'm not saying my father and I were very vocal, but the vast majority of our generation, most Christian white men, bent the knee at evil and Satan, and we sat there and we did it because we wanted to keep our X accounts and our Facebook and all of our Facebook friends, and we didn't want to say anything in our workplace. So wait a minute, diversity. Whoa, 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 whoa! I thought this was a meritocracy. No, 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 no. If you're black or you're X, Y, and Z, you get to go in the front of the line. Wait a minute, that's racism. Shut up, or you're gonna. Okay, you need to go to re-education, some kind of training. And we all said okay, because we went down the slippery slope, and now we're down in this muck and mire in the valley, and we're like, how do we get out of it? Well, it ain't going to be easy. It ain't going to be peaches and rainbows and unicorns. It's going to be violent because you gave power and authority and money and leverage to people that hate America, and you think they're just going to give it back because we want it? No, it's going to be a battle, and I don't know if America is ready for that type of violence. I just don't.
The only
I-
option would be a revival. That would be something that I think could change a community, could change a neighborhood, could change a city. But even revivals are they're only temporary. They last for a period of time. They may affect one generation at best. But in my research in that, I've done a lot of research. It seems that revivals often come 30 to 50 years before major catastrophe.
Hmm?
And it's almost more like in a way, it's like God, saving some souls before terrible disaster comes. And
Well,
yeah.
yeah, but Nate, where's the revival going to take place? Is it going to take place in New York City, or is it going to take place in Nebraska, in Iowa, in Dallas, in Texas? Who's it going to be? It's going to be a revival of Christians. However, we have tens of millions of people that are not Christians that we brought into this country. The revival will not touch them. So it's going to continue to be this us versus them. And then as we become revival and we learn about Christ, the real Christ, not the gay Christ and the gay God, that we're talking about a violent God that destroyed complete planet, destroyed it. And he's going to have judgment. And now we're going to be reinvigorated with Christian faith. And we're going to go, holy cow, look at what we've done. We have to change.
Mhm.
Well, all these other people that have been given positions of authority and power, they don't want to change because they're Muslims or they're atheists or they don't believe in anything. And now what does that look like? Again, we come back to a physical change has to occur. Well, will the Christians rise up and take their country back, or will we be like Sweden and the rest of Europe and just be a bunch of beta males and bend and allow our women to be raped and murdered? That's really the question. It keeps everything you and I are talking about tonight keeps coming back to, holy cow, it's got to be a physical. It's going to be a physical battle. There's no other way around it.
Either that or we learn to live in peace next to each other as neighbors. I mean, honestly,
Yeah, good. No, not going to happen.
I
It's
mean,
human
honestly,
nature.
that's
Nate,
why
it's
I
human
live in West
nature.
Virginia, brother.
Yeah, yeah. So you're sitting here saying, kumbaya, let's all get together, but you moved, right?
Yeah, I did.
I moved. I did. I know exactly why I moved where I did. So the idea that we're all going to get along, history's already proven race, ethnicity, language, culture, societal norms, religion, it all matters. We've been propagandized our whole entire life that it doesn't matter, that America's a melting pot. That was a lie. We're not. We were founded by white Christian settlers. So stop acting as if Muslims had any kind of role in this or anybody else had a role in it. The white Christian settlers created this nation. Why don't we be proud of it? If it was a black Muslim creation and I came in here, I would have to acknowledge that this is a black Muslim nation. Okay, well, they have those. That's called the Middle East. And I'm okay with it. Why am I not allowed to be okay with a white settled nation, Christian nation, and I have to give it up? I don't want to give it up. And there are men like me that have had it, Nate, and we're not going to be quiet anymore. And because I've already been called in law enforcement, you're a racist, xenophobe, you're blah, blah, blah. I don't care. What do those words even mean anymore? I know what I believe in, and I'm not afraid of anybody. I'm not afraid to speak. You want to call me whatever? Who cares? And I'm telling you, there's millions of men like me that have had it. We've reached the max because a lot of us have moved. We've moved. We said,
Yeah.
okay, we'll concede that. I moved. Oh, now you're coming to my new home and telling me I have to have a mosque and I have to have calls to prayer. No, I'm drawing the line and saying, you wanted a war? All right, let's go. I'm ready. And when history shows when our side gets to the point that we're like, we're ready to go to war, it never ends good for the other side. Never, ever, ever does it end good. It ends in pain and suffering that they can't even fathom. Men like me will do things that we didn't know that we had in our side of our soul because you stripped us of everything and you made us feel as if we have no other choice. And there's nothing more powerful, more scary, more frightening than a man that has nothing to lose. That's a bad dude to mess with. And that's what America's becoming. I'm sorry to say, but that's just the truth.
Well, I think your sentiment, is felt by many. And I feel like it is largely the result of our nation, which once was a nation that had values and that had similar ideals and beliefs, ones that we were founded on, that we gave that up for this globalist view
Yeah.
this quote unquote melting pot, type of ideal. It used to be that when people came to this nation, they assimilated. They joined, they came here because they wanted a piece of the American dream. But if we don't have anything anymore, then what is it? And I do think that the one thing that I would caution you, and I caution every conservative, is that we have to ask ourselves, were we as a nation successful because of our European genetics, or were we successful because of our belief in God, our Christian values? And I would say it was our Christian values that ultimately led us to success, not so much the color of our skin or even our
Yeah, but
nationality
how can you say that?
origin.
I mean, but I got to push back. How can
Sure.
you say that? Western Europe created all the arts, the music, language, intellectual enlightenment, on and on and on and on. That's where it came from. So the idea that I can look at India, that's been around for thousands of years, China, I can look at all of them, and they're all kind of third world dumps. And America and Europe created all this. I don't think that I have to
Well,
make a
I lived in
decision.
Japan for 3 years, and Japan is certainly not European, but
It's beautiful.
it is a great nation that has lasted thousands of years. I can look at, even now I have some problems with some of these nations, but there are nations that you can go to that are not predominantly white. Now, again, if I went to Japan, I have to understand they have cultural norms there that are not culturally the same here.
Correct.
And they have this kind of mentality of protecting their cultural norms and kind of accepting foreigners in their country, but realizing that they're foreigners and that they're never, so they're not expected necessarily to have the same, ideals, or I guess, as them, but then you don't get citizenship there. It's impossible. You want to go become a
But you're
citizen.
proving my point, Nate.
No, I
So
agree. So I think
what
that's part of the problem, is that the rampant immigration problem is a problem because it dilutes the cultural norms of our nation, and it leads to strife. It leads to, a breakdown of civil society. That's clear.
Mhm.
There's no doubt about that. And the Southwest, um, the Southwest has always had a large influx of immigration from South America or from Central and South America, or I would say Central America primarily. But that was always, that was not as a it was kind of relegated to the Southwest, right? Southern California, parts of Texas and New Mexico, Arizona. And that was kind of where it stayed. And even the people who did come here illegally, like back in my day when I was a kid, they still integrated. And for the most part, they weren't, other than some parts, you had obviously crime, right? But you had a lot of people who came here and they integrated and they participated in
Mhm.
the American dream. That's no longer going on anymore. It
No,
seems
it's
like
not.
it seems like they've just opened the doors wide, allowing anybody in without any concern whatsoever. And even put aside illegal immigration, which I think everybody with any intellectual integrity has to admit, if you're here illegally, you have to go, period. Whether you are a good person or not, whether you are a contributor or not, you did not come here legally. You have to leave. And if you are a person that contributed, then maybe we create a path for you to be able to come back legally, but it shouldn't be without some sort of, consequence.
But why do I that's my only thing is why do I have to make any concessions for anybody outside of Americans? I should make no concessions. My job, as if I'm president, immigration is only there to benefit America. If you don't benefit America, well, tough crap. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I
Go
agree.
fix your country. And the idea, though, that Japan doesn't have to make excuses for why they want to keep their nation Japanese and Japanese only, but I have to. Western Europe and Western European nations like the ones that I live in America, I have to somehow pick and choose and explain why I want it to be the way it is. Wait a minute. You have all black nations in the continent of
But
Africa. You have Middle East. Why am I have to take everybody?
But where is
Why?
all of this that you're talking about, though? Think about it, though. Where is the majority of this being driven from? It's being driven from predominantly white liberals.
Yes, they're the
I mean,
death
they're
of
the
us.
ones. They are the worst.
They're the
I mean,
worst.
honestly, people that are coming here. I know a lot of people that have come here from places like India, come here from places like Japan, China, Korea, South Korea, and they're fine. I mean, they're coming here, they're making a living, they're adopting our cultural norms. They might keep their religion, they might keep inside their house. They might still have a shrine to their many gods. I don't know, don't care. But when it comes to being out in public and being a part of the American dream, they're all about it. But it's white liberals, predominantly from the universities, that are pushing this nonsense into our nation, that basically looks at everything that has been contributed by our European ancestors that came to this country and made it into what it is. They have basically looked at that and have treated it like as if it was something evil or wrong or terrible. And a perfect example of that culminated during the all of the BLM riots and during all of we saw it when they started tearing down statues, even Abraham Lincoln.
Uh-huh. But those are our leaders. That's our culture, and that proves our point. Coming full circle from the beginning of this conversation, we've allowed people to come into our nation, and we've allowed the mental patients that self-loathe and hate America to strip our nation of our founding leaders. Why did we allow that to happen? Why? Where was the Christian nationalists in America rising up and going, no, you're not taking down that statue. No, you're not building 100, 200, 500, 1,000 mosques in America. You're not having a call to prayer because,
Well,
quite honestly,
how do you correct that, though? I mean, obviously, it's a combination of the media, right? Part of the problem is the media. Part of the problem is the university, because all these people, none of them are people who clearly have jobs. So they're likely, most of them, students, that are on student break or whatever. Like, how is it that so few people can cause so much disruption into our system? It takes the media, it takes these far left Democrats, that are speaking up and promoting, like what's her name down there in LA, when she was standing
Karen
up.
Bass.
I was thinking of the other one, Maxine Waters, saying, "Oh, you need to stand up. You need to, go into those restaurants and disrupt everything." That kind of activism, that kind of attitude, honestly, those people should be arrested. I'm not for a heavy-handed police state, but I do think that people that disturb, society, disturb the peace, people who are funding riots and things like that, like George Soros and Open Society Foundation. Look, Russia is not incorrect in basically outlawing Open Society Foundation. Like George Soros, if he ever stepped foot in Russia, he would be arrested immediately.
Yeah, and Hungary as well.
Yeah, why that man is still allowed to, and his son now, Alex Soros, are allowed to fund some of the activities that they fund. So a lot of it comes down to, I think, part of the problem is I don't think we have the mechanisms in place to prosecute. Part of the problem is I think that the judges in this land have largely been corrupted, and the judges don't have the bones to rule properly. And the prosecutors, the way that the prosecutions are done, they don't want to take on a case and bring a prosecution unless they think they can win. And so I don't think it's a simple solution. I think it's a complicated mess that has got many moving parts. And if we don't try to tackle them all, then we're still going to miss the boat. And I like I said, I honestly, I wish I could tell folks listening that, that we're, that we have a solution, but I don't think there is one.
Yeah.
I think the best we can do is we can pray, we can be truthful when we speak, and I think that we have to call out evil when we see it. And but I honestly, I don't put my faith in men. I don't put my faith. It's like that scripture says. Some may trust in horses, right? Some may trust in chariots, but I will trust in the name of my God. And that is the truth. I trust in Jesus, and I hope for the best, and I pray for it, and I speak out. That's why I have the show, so that we can talk about these types of things. But I hope that we have some people. We got 1,500 people listening right now. I hope they hear some of this, and maybe it encourages them to be involved in their community. I mean, it starts right at home. How many people know who their school board is? How many people know who their local representative is? I'll tell you, I'm talking to mine all the time. I reach out to my representatives in my state because I realize that power is more effective locally than it is at the federal government. But I have a good relationship with my congressman, and I do reach out to his office, and I do show up to events. Sometimes it's a pain in my butt because I'd rather be out doing something else, but I attend those Republican committee meetings sometimes so that I can get to know people and have some influence. And I think that's what we have to do. We got to be involved. We got to stay engaged, and not just forget about it. I'm going to go, live my dream and let the world fall to hell in a handbasket. So,
I agree. Amen, brother.
well, I was let's we've talked about a lot of stuff tonight, and so JJ, I want to just give you the kind of the final word, and then we'll close in prayer. But what is it that, if you had one thing that you wanted to tell people that are watching the show tonight that you wanted to get across to them, something you want them to think about and ponder, what would that be?
I want you to ponder that your federal government opened the borders for 4 years and allowed 30 million people to come in. 60 to 70% of them were single adult military age men, with over 200,000 special interest aliens. Those are terrorists that they released into America. I want you to understand there's 50 million illegal aliens in America. There's 55 legal immigrants and visas, and they are overstaying their visas by probably thousands a day. We are looking at a demographic time bomb. Our women are not reproducing at the replacement level. The people that we brought in are reproducing, by UN data, not my data, UN data, 5 times the rate of an American citizen. Therefore, it's a bad demographic time bomb. And if Donald Trump does not remove these people immediately, then our nation is over with, because it's a math problem with bad variables, and we're on the losing end of it.
Yep. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this candid conversation, Lord, for these issues. They're much bigger than us. Lord, give us wisdom and give our leaders wisdom and the courage to do what needs to be done to protect our nation and protect its citizens and protect our way of life. Lord, I do pray that you would open the eyes of American citizens to realize that this massive immigration of people who do not assimilate to Western Christian culture, that this is not a good thing and that it is a time bomb waiting to happen. I pray that you would open the eyes of people, and I pray that to stave off what is coming, that you would bring about multiple revivals across this country, and that you would open the eyes of even those that are coming into this country that maybe have no intention of assimilating, but they would see how great America is and what it has to offer from its historical standpoint. Lord, I do pray that you would give Trump wisdom on how to handle this, on how to deal with it, and the courage to do what must be done. I pray, Lord, that you would remove those people from this nation who intended harm, who intend to change our culture and our way of life. Any of them who intend to bring destruction and lead us down the path of destruction. I pray that you would remove those people from power and influence. And Lord, I ask for your grace on our nation. In Jesus' name, amen.
Man, thank you for the time, man. Appreciate
Absolutely. JJ, where can people follow you on social media?
The best way to do is just go to my website, jjcarrell.com. Has all my socials on there, writings, books, etc. Just at jjcarrell.com, and I have a daily show, and all my episodes are on there. So I appreciate it, man. Great conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, and God bless you. And God bless all of you that are watching, and thank you guys for being with us for this hour and 45 minutes.
All right.
With that, God bless and good night.
Raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless, day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.